Australians must escape the fantasy utopia. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, sir.
Back again for another round then.
What we're trying to do with these shows is to bring some objectivity and some truth to a whole host of economic events. And on occasion, we do call out public officials. I continue to hear people say, I'm afraid to speak. And good on you and Martin for speaking. Well, again, I don't think people, particularly in this country, need to be as alarmed as other countries about speaking, particularly about macroeconomics. I mean, it's not like we're talking about, to my mind, macroeconomics is not that sensitive, but maybe to others, potentially it could be. But because people are scared, because people are not willing to speak, the issue as a result of that is we have a big chunk of the population that is ignorant about a whole host of economic issues, and they are being led to believe fantasy propositions. Now, we addressed one fantasy proposition in the last show, and then this show we're going to address another one, and that's about the age pension.
Yes, and let me just make a point. That is, I'm very used to philosophical debate and discussion, right? And going into issues and exploring those issues. I mean, that's my training, that's my background. And in academic circles, that's normally what you do, right? What I find is that those people who've not had that experience are really nervous about asking some of the bigger questions, right? They almost don't want to look over the parapet for feel what might be over the parapet. Whereas I would say you've got to understand what's over there, what is beyond the parapet, because without that you can't make good decisions. So for me, what we do here is really, really important. I want to encourage more people to discuss, debate, and ask questions, because to my mind, asking questions is part of being human.
Absolutely. And just to make one additional point is, in my experience, having been recording with you for a few years, I've heard these sort of comments from both domestic-born Australians as well as immigrants. So it is a interesting phenomena that people have said, well, you have a platform, and so, well, nothing prevents you from having your own platform yes. and actually exposing whatever sort of truth that you wish to have a chat about. But today we're going to talk about the age pension because, Martin, so in the last week I had a specific conversation and a comment was made to me, and I thought to myself, well, one, that's false, and two, I've heard this comment being said on multiple occasions, and it's time to call out some truth about this. Now, I was in a situation where I spoke with a couple of people here in the Illawarra, and one of these people is close to retirement age. And the comment was made to me that this person is nearing, because he started work in his teens, so he's nearing on 50 years of work throughout his life. And the comment he made was, by virtue of having worked nearly half a century, I'm entitled to the pension because of my service as a worker. Now, I immediately said, no, you're not. You're not entitled to anything just because you worked. And so this, and I should say, particularly, I remember maybe it was after the first ABBA budget in 2014 that ABBA Hockey dropped, and there was maybe a show on the ABC Q&A or something like that. And I remember someone said exactly the same thing. I've worked all my life. I'm now entitled to the pension. I'm sure some of our audience members believe that. That is just a myth. It's a fantasy. You are actually entitled to nothing just because you worked for 50 years or 40 years or whatever the case may be. And we're going to explore this issue and actually spell out what we think are the facts that are related to the age pension.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring this because you're right. It's an area that is very badly understood. And of course, there are a lot of people who try and reconstruct their finances as they move into retirement to keep their assets at a certain level to make sure they can access this pension, right? Thinking it's a right, is it almost divine right?
Yes.
But actually, there's a bunch of issues that people need to understand.
So the reality is that there is no inherent right to the pension in this country. The ability to get the pension is a function of the laws of the parliament and the financial capacity of the parliament and the government to pay.
Yep.
if you get a point in time where the government does not have the capacity to pay, guess what? You may see your pension cut. You may not have any sort of pension. And that's why the conversation we had in our last show and not only the last show, but the last 3 shows about the federal budget as well as the state government budgets, it is so critical, because if you are planning your retirement on the expectation that in the next 20 or 25 years of the rest of your life, you're going to get the pension, if we don't rein these politicians in with these imprudent financial decisions around government spending, there could be a point in time where you may see your financial conditions change radically. And one of the interesting things that I was surprised about was that in 1931, during the Great Depression, the government, and this was the Scullin government before Joseph Lyons was elected, the Scullin government cut the pension in Australia. So let's actually bring this up. So this is from the Parliament's own website. So 1931, from July, pension rates were reduced as part of the emergency financial measures taken during the Depression. So again, a lot of times people will say to me, the government will never do that. Never will happen here. She'll be right. Well, we have, just like we showed in 2019 on bail-in, that bail-in happened in Australia in 1892. If anyone says they will never cut the pension, they will never take the pension away from me because I worked for 50 years and I gave my life to this country, guess what? During financial extreme conditions, they have in historical times, in the Depression, they cut the pension. So people should not be under any illusion. And the other point I'll make, Martin, is that when this individual said this to me, I said, well, who told you have this right to the pension? And the answer was, well, when I was growing up, and again, this is an Australian in his 60s, and he was born here. He said, as I was growing up, this is what the politicians told me, that if you committed your life to a life of work in this country, you will have an inherent right to the pension. Now, when this person said this to me, I said, well, Parliament's full of lying criminals, and I should know because I used to work in the building. So just because some politician 30 years ago said that if you worked all your life you're going to get the pension, that means nothing. The other point I made to this individual was, and this is critical, is I said, whatever tax you've paid over 50 years of work, that money is gone. It has been spent. Yep. It goes to consolidated revenue, and then it is spent on an annual basis. So I said, whatever you've paid in tax, whether that money was spent prudently or imprudently, it's gone. So if you are now planning your retirement on the expectation of getting a part pension or a full pension, you are relying on the generosity of current taxpayers and the financial balance sheet of the government. And if that ever comes into question, your financial future is in peril. And this person was quite shocked when I said this, but I said, that is the reality of the situation. And you've got to get out of this utopia of, because I worked 50 years, I get the pension. No, you do not. You get the pension up until the point where we can no longer borrow. And again, we have, by June 2025, gross federal government debt is at $1.2 trillion. We have the state governments drowning in debt. We have foreign debt at $2.5 trillion. We have the biggest household debt in the history of the country. And pensioners, current pensioners, or those who are getting close to retirement, need to wake up and say, well, if government finances, if this economy is not managed well in the next 5 to 10 years, if we're not getting on top of these issues, what's going to happen to me in retirement? Because that is a frightening thing when you are too old to actually start to generate sufficient income to supplement any cuts or any changes in terms of the government pension.
I agree, John. It is a frightening thought. And I just want to underscore one of the things you said a little while ago, because I reckon most people will have assumed somehow when they were paying their taxes through their working life, that some of those taxes were going to some sort of accumulation fund, right, that would actually translate to their pension when they got to the end of their working life, right? That's what I guess most people would assume. That is Completely wrong, right?
I mean, that happens in the superannuation system. So we work and make a contribution to super, but the government pension is exactly right. No money has been put aside for the age pension.
Correct. So it is always funded out of current revenue, right, and current effectively costs. So what that means is that what's happened in the past is in the past, right? Every year the government has to budget to pay a certain amount for the pension, right? And as you say, if their finances get really, really strapped, it'll be on the agenda potentially to say, well, what can we afford now?